All right, episode 235. We are back and we are talking about, look, 71% of real estate agents did not sell a house last year. So we're going to break down why they failed at doing so. We're going to get started right now.
I don't know it's possible.
In a hot minute.
It's been, was it before Christmas?
Oh, yes, way before Christmas. Before Thanksgiving as well. So
Yowza.
Yeah, been a second or two since we've been in here, and we wanted to wait till after the kind of the holiday season to bring this back and revamp it. So, look, if this is maybe one of your first times tuning in to the only real estate podcast worth listening to, welcome. We've done this 235 times at least, and so what you're going to see here as we continue to do this every Wednesday, except for next Wednesday. I'll be coming back from Disney, so I'll definitely be ready to come back. But
I'll do a solo show.
Yes,
just be me in here, just talking about the things I think are great about real estate.
Yes, here's what you're going to see: kind of a revamped. If you're new, you won't notice. If you've been here and watched this a time or two, maybe 235 times, you're going to see kind of a revamp of the show. And we have it's just Matt and I now. Yep. Brian has kind of taken a hiatus from the show. Nothing that
no, he just got other stuff going on, man.
Yeah.
Other things to focus on.
Yeah, a lot of respect out of that, and he's focusing on Homeward Property Management.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the one sponsor of the show. If you're local here in Dallas and you have need to send a referral for someone who needs to get a property leased and or managed, then Dana Wynn at Homeward Property Management. You just go to homewarddfw.com. But look, we're going to talk about today this staggering number that when it came out, when Inman published this, we kind of sent this around as a joke because I saw this stat, which is 71% of real estate agents in 2024 did not sell a house.
Even one house.
Not one house.
It's a crazy number.
And what was it in 23? I think it was 49% of agents did not sell a single transaction. So that increased, obviously. And the day that I saw this was the day that, friend of the show, so I'm not going to sandbag it, and kind of talk trash too much, but, Real Producers had just put out their top 500 and now the top 1,000 real estate agent list. And so I'm seeing all these agents posting that they're a top 500 and top 1,000 real estate producer. And then you see this stat of 71% of agents did not sell a single house.
It's Real Producers is now just anybody who did a deal.
Yes. Yes. You did one, you're the top 1,000.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Good work.
And the crazy part is the Good Home team and just for transparency, Matt and I are on the same real estate team.
Yep.
And Matt not only is a real estate agent, but also runs the productivity side of it and has a large group there. The Good Home team in 2024 sold a little over 200 houses last year.
Yeah.
And so had one of their best, one of their best years in really history and in a long time. And so why is it, do you believe, that we're seeing this high number of agents in the industry just not able to sell one house?
I mean, look, I just went to Champion School of Real Estate and spoke to new agents. And one of the things I said about them is congratulations for getting into real estate at a time when it's not incredibly easy and you're going to learn how to do it correctly. And I think what we're seeing is just if the average agent was doing a handful of deals already, 7 or 8 deals, and then you move into a market that's just exceptionally challenging between the DOJ stuff, the commission stuff. I don't know how you go a whole year without selling a house because of anything. It seems like that'd be pretty difficult to do if you've been putting in minimal effort. But it's hard to make buyers and sellers meet up right now. There's a lot of market factors that I think are taking agents out, and nobody was prepared for it. You and I have talked about it on this show for a long time. Every real estate training you ever go to talks about how you need to fireproof your business by being good at lead generation or doing open houses or being consistent in something. And I think what we're just seeing is the massive exposure of a bunch of agents who just hadn't really built a proper business, and then the market gets hard and there's no deals for them to close.
And let's look at it this way. Like, so when we break it down, and started making this list of, and we were going to talk about this last week and the week before, or when it came out. And a lot of this is market saturation.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's 1.5 million realtors nationwide. And so obviously that's going to drop. And, we're seeing an oversaturation in the marketplace. But if we look at it, some agents had their best year ever.
Mm-hmm.
And why is that? Like David, David Bintek on the Good Home team had a massive year. One of his, that actually was his best year in
Absolutely.
his career. And in the midst of the last time we saw this lowest transaction count. So there's 4.06 million closing, homes sold in 2024. This is the lowest amount since 1995.
I was wondering what that number was today, because I tried to bring it up again when I was talking to these newer agents, and I didn't know. I'm glad you shared that, because I knew it was dramatically lower than we've seen in the past, but I didn't know it went back that far.
So and the turnover rate is 2.5% of the kind of total homes out there available, which is again super low. The last time we kind of saw these transactional volumes this low was in the downturn of 2008 in terms of the 2.5% turnover rate. And we should see a better year this year.
Yeah.
Right. But last year, I do think that the NAR lawsuit settlement with commissions really disrupted a lot of people's focus.
Mm-hmm.
And, in my opinion, thinking that this industry is now over.
Yep. I think it took the wind out of a lot of people's sails. They allowed themselves to be defeated by the news. I had said it on the show. That was around the time I had left all those groups. I had done it right before that. So I didn't get that like just that crazy real estate agent fervor that everybody does when big news comes like that, and all the people just pontificating over what a ridiculous thing they think is going to happen. And look, we're in an emotional business. You have to hear no a lot. You have to develop a thick skin. And I think agents who hadn't really been exposed to like the no's or the fear that can come around your business not being where you want it to be, I think they just curled up in a ball and let it just pass them by. They didn't know what to do. I still think brokerages, even to this day, have done probably a pretty poor job of being out there and really like exciting agents about the new opportunity, as opposed to just making it like this new rules you have to change or else type stuff. And I think it just put an ugly cloud over that. And some people don't deal well with that kind of stuff.
Well, they let it get in their head.
Exactly.
I mean, how often, I can't remember how many shows we did in 23 and 24 leading up to this and the change. And we let a lot of fear run rampant.
Mm-hmm.
We went to this, worst case scenario of buyer's agent commission going away. And we kind of let that take the wheel and just drive.
Yeah.
And in all reality, we probably gave up on doing the things that we should be doing in our business every single day. Lead generating, looking for motivated sellers, motivated buyers every single day. And what I want to ask you, Matt, because you went through kind of before all this, you went through a bottoming out in your business.
Mm-hmm.
Where you were basically restarting over. You went from a massive producing team, kind of, helping with that, then went solo, and then ultimately decided to partner with the Good Home team and rebuild your business. Walk me through that mental mindset and how did you knew what you needed to do,
Yep.
which is what? Make your calls.
Yep.
And follow up, but you're not having a lot of business come in. You're probably not very strong mentally. You're probably doubting whether you truly have what it takes to stay in the business.
Yep.
Walk us through kind of that process.
Well, the changeover from being on the big team wasn't just like an environmental change. I also changed brokerages. So like my business was very agent referral heavy. When I left KW, those agent referrals went away, right? And rightfully so, but I was not prepared for that at all. I had also let so much of my business go during that time because I was just honestly high on my own supply and just enjoying the team and the fact that it was growing and you're making money off this instead of that. And so when I left, I don't think I realized how much business I had just lost already in the process of how I'd been running my business for a couple of years, because I've been insulated through the overrides on the teams and things like that. So I didn't feel it in my wallet the same way. And so there was a huge like shock aspect of that. But you're going out on your own, you're trying something new. You're like, hey, when I was on my own before, I was not very great. But I've been on this team. I've probably learned something for the past 5 years. Turns out I hadn't, in the sense of like the discipline around what I needed to do. And then on top of it, you have to now start funding all of your own systems and services. And that gets expensive and scary real quick. I mean, the guilt every month of spending $100 on expireds and then not calling them.
Yep.
Like, it was just like, so it's also this compounding effect. And what I knew I needed, because it wasn't that I was ever a bad real estate agent, but I had always been very lucky in the sense that I just outworked my lack of preparedness. And one of the things about partnering with not just you specifically, the Good Home team, but also the energy in the office, is that it's just a prospecting based team, right? I've made more dials in the past 4 months than I think I made in the previous 4 years. And that's not even close to an exaggeration. I mean, 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, I did 1,000 dials in one day. It took me 7.5 hours, right? It wasn't outrageous. And I say this all the time, like, I worked a regular work day that day. It's like I just worked an 8-hour day. And that's been the biggest pivot, is I now have control of the reins on my business. I know if I make a certain amount of dials, business is going to show up. Whereas before it was just kind of like, man, I really hope an agent referral falls out of the sky, or I really hope, the agents on the team close enough deals. And I had no control over my business at all.
Well, and I think that also when we hear, someone's going to hear like, oh, you made 1,000 calls, and they just go like, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
And what in all reality is, you're calling expireds, cancels, for sale by owners, and the
old buyer leads, people returning to website
system. But most agents are not even calling their friends and family to even talk business. And so where I think this part of the 71% of agents that did not sell a house in 2024, I think one of the biggest problems is that we sit here and say the things that we're not going to do, and we let that again control everything. And then there's an abundance now of training programs and coaching programs and mentorships, and we're searching for the training program or coaching program that we think is going to be the silver bullets. And what we want to do is we want to go either pay for that or try to get it for free, but go through the whole thing before we actually start to implement. And what we're really bad at as human beings is actually finishing something. We start it, but we don't finish it. We get all excited, but then we don't finish it. And then we don't start what the real thing is, which is, making our calls, and putting that, what we learned, or the first part of it, into action, because we don't have we don't think that we have the full understanding and knowledge to be able to start talking to people.
It feels really good to be getting ready. You know what I mean? Like, because getting ready doesn't have any disappointment. There's all this opportunity. The sun's still rising over the mountain in the background when you're getting ready.
You haven't failed yet.
Yeah. When you start walking into the middle of it, there are days where it feels like you're not really getting anywhere. There are days that feel like it's not really worth putting in that level of effort or whatever. So I think that's what myself and a lot of agents probably fell victim to at certain times in our career, is just that even if and this is more for seasoned agents, even if you know what you're supposed to be doing, there's times where it just feels fruitless, or it feels like people don't want to talk to you. I think that's the biggest thing that's happening right now, because the conversations are difficult. There have been reasons for certain people to sit on the sidelines. There are people who are just golden handcuffed to an amazing interest rate and a crap load of equity, and they have no interest in selling. So there is an amount of rejection out there that maybe, if you've only been in this for the last few years, you haven't experienced at all, because even when it was hard, it wasn't hard like this.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. And when I was cutting my teeth and really getting the battle scars going, that was in the Great Recession. And, people were behind on their mortgage. People were getting foreclosed on. They were upside down on equity. And you would walk into their house and you're like, who in their right mind is going to pay $30,000 to sell their house and move?
Yeah.
I mean, who has that money? And what we start building up is these kind of limiting beliefs, or we start projecting our beliefs on our potential clients. And you're like, I would never do this. So of course Jane and John Doe wouldn't do that either.
Yes.
And in reality, we didn't sit down and really have a consultative appointment to really understand their wants and needs and their desires, and maybe try to figure out there's something else going on to want to pay $30,000 or to trade that 2.75% interest rate, because in 21 and 22, those low rates, how many times after that did you hear, well, why would I trade my low interest rate into getting another house?
Yep.
Well, you're starting to see people doing that.
Yes.
Why? Because it's not about the interest rate, right? That the interest rate isn't what's keeping, was keeping people in a house. It's the layout, the function, and the location of it.
Yep.
And so if you get laid off, well, it doesn't matter that you have a low rate if you're not bringing an income to pay the mortgage, right? If you get relocated to another state, it doesn't matter that you have a low rate unless you want to use homeward property management to rent it out and manage it while you're remote. That's fine, but you're going to sell the property. And so we've got to go figure out what is that true motivation. And the agents that got fat and happy, and the agents that started out in 2020 and 21 and 22, they don't know how to ask those questions because that wasn't really an objection or a problem they were facing at that time.
Well, and look, there's also this, like, just who you're in alignment with, because I'm learning this through training the new agents on the Good Home team, through all of our place training, that like what to do in the living room, the listing presentation, it is art, right? Like there is some nuance to it. There's different ways to approach it. And I don't think that it's very prominent in real estate right now, or maybe ever, to really understand how to run a good buyer consultation, to really understand how to run a good listing appointment, because all the problems that we're talking about, that's where they're addressed, right? And we just don't even know how to get there. We go in, we probably talk too much, we don't bring anything, and then we don't understand why the people didn't hire us, right? Or we don't qualify the appointment properly, or we didn't have a buyer consultation with that buyer, and we're still out running around showing people without buyer reps and those types of things. Like it's just really easy, I think, for agents to find reasons to derail themselves because of what you said. I wouldn't want somebody to cold call me, so I'm not going to cold call anybody. But then we can also sit there and look at real estate training and understand that everybody doesn't think the same. But as soon as it comes to us moving out of our discomfort, we immediately default to this space that keeps us safe from having to go out there and be uncomfortable and push into things.
In 2019, I went to a mastermind in where was I? I was in Florida. I was in the Florida Keys, and it was a mastermind, not just with just real estate agents, but there was network marketing, top network marketing business owners there as well. And there was a gentleman named Jefferson Santos who went up and talked about our egos, and he's like, our egos hold us back in creating the best version of life that we really want. And when we hear about ego, we probably think of someone who's arrogant, cocky.
It feels like a confidence move,
right? Yeah. But fear is an ego. Saying I'm shy is an ego. Saying, one of the things we have up here is really, really diving into social media, which, you've taken a step back from. I took definitely a step back in 2024. But, fear of content creation and personal branding, because they don't like the way they look on video. They don't like the way they sound. They don't want to look ridiculous. And they start to, they're letting their egos drive the bus, when in reality, our number one job is to go out and, again, like I said, search for motivated buyers and sellers. We're in the people moving business. Yep. Right? We're here to deliver the dream of homeownership everywhere. So how do we do that if we're not going to put ourselves out there?
Sarah and I talked about this and I'll give her credit for saying this. I kind of like morphed it a little bit, but like, just most people's audio does not match their video, meaning what comes out of their face doesn't match what their body is doing to make that happen. And that can be social media. It can be anything. And then even the agents who do, I think, sometimes put effort to it, there's not enough consistent effort. And then to your point, that's where the ego comes in, the self-doubt comes in. I'm not really good at this, or I'm going to try something else. We had an agent on the team the other day who came in and had listened to somebody on YouTube, and they had written some of their own scripts, and they weren't bad. But one of them started out with and I can't remember who the guy's name is that he listened to. Somebody listening will probably know, but the guy started out with, "Hey, I know you probably hate me right now." And kind of went into it. And as we were sitting there talking, one of the cool things, this is a really young agent. He heard the feedback, heard why maybe that wasn't the best one for him at this point in his career, and immediately pivoted to something else. He didn't have he wrote the script like based off this guy's thing. He came in super excited about it, right? He even tried it on like 15 calls and it didn't really get him anywhere. And then so he asked for help and he pivoted off of that. And I think a lot of agents just aren't in a space where they can do that. They're not in a space where there's people to collaborate with. They're not in a space there's people to bounce ideas off of. They're not in a space for somebody to hear them be like, "Hey, that's not really that good." So even when they do put forward max effort, it feels a lot like spinning their tires or fruitless, or they're not even sure if they're doing it right. So they eject before they get skilled at it. And I think that's another thing that's really holding agents back is just the alignment with maybe not even their brokerage, just how they push into that brokerage and get to know people and learn and those types of things.
So let me ask you this. That brings up a good point. And I mentioned earlier the abundance of just people that are getting into the coaching and mentorship space, but it's a paid mentor, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of these coaches, if you really go and analyze their previous business, they weren't that successful in it. Maybe they had a little bit of success, but they probably didn't like it. They saw that they could coach from anywhere and have this kind of, time freedom or maybe a location freedom of doing so. But do you believe, or would you agree that, the collaboration point has really gone away because of COVID?
Yeah. I mean, one, I love the sales language. Wouldn't you agree? But I also, but you're right. I think a couple of things happened with COVID when it just comes to real estate and connection. We are way too, we experience this on our morning team meetings. It's actually one of the things that I don't allow on my Thursday masterminds. If your camera is not on, you're booted off. I put time into this. You should be wanting to put time into this. But Zoom has allowed us to hide.
Yes.
And to the point where even in a real estate sales space or as a team, owner or a brokerage or whatever, you never want to rock the boat, right? You want people to feel welcome. You don't want people really struggle with being called out about things. And so that disconnect has just become exacerbated over time. They can be present without engaging at all. And we were already societally moving towards this with texting and other ways that we had, voicemail was now a way to screen calls instead of like the old answer machine where you got excited to get home and hear. People just have too much access to us all the time. So we've started retreating a little bit and hiding more and maybe valuing that alone time, but it's permeated and persisted into everything. And in a culture or in a career like real estate where the structure isn't a given, you do have some personal accountability to create the structure and stick to it. And again, COVID made a lot of those things easier. So if somebody was already inclined to hide, to maybe be down on themselves, they don't do things, to not accept accountability, it just gave them the absolute like technical ability to do that super easy.
When it's hard, look, on Zoom or Google Meet, it's hard to get that true community feel to it, right? And how many times have you been on a Zoom where honestly you were doing something else?
Yeah, I even have your camera on and you're just like looking down at your phone and trying to make eye contact every once in a while.
Absolutely. I mean, look, I host our weekly sales meeting, and there's times when our lender's talking and I'm doing something else, and I maybe miss what he just said. And so, this collaboration, where I believe that how do we lower this 71%? How do we get back to, all right, 40%? How do we get into 30% of all agents aren't selling something just because this is a sales industry and sales isn't for everyone? And I do believe that is getting back into in-person collaboration. Maybe those are events, but also maybe it's just an accountability group.
Yep.
That you can hold yourselves freely accountable. Your feelings aren't going to get hurt, and you do it together because where there's misery loves company. There's also a reason why you want to share your wins, and you want to when other people are doing it, you're like, okay, if they're making that call, right? If they just called their friends and started talking shop and then started asking for referrals, I can easily do this.
Well, and here's the great thing about the office, right? Like, and we experience this with some of the agents. They come in and maybe they don't dive on the phones, but they're in the environment. If you go to the barber shop enough, eventually you're going to get a haircut.
Yes.
Right? Like, it's okay even to go in and not do anything right at first. Going to the gym and sitting on the bench, at least you went to the gym, right? I told you before the show started, I weigh 217. Doctor said you got to get to 200, dude. You're pre-diabetic. Like, you got some stuff going on. We need to figure it out. And I started tracking legitimately tracking my food. It is staggering, like, the stuff I was putting in my body. And I gave myself the first 10 days of tracking my food to make no changes. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to eat what I eat, and we're just going to see where it went. And then through that, I started saying, okay, here's the really problematic parts in my diet, and then removing those. And then what happens, right? I'm down 8 pounds, moving towards the 200 I need to be. It's the same thing with lead generation, right? If you go in and see people doing those certain types of things, you hear the conversations, there's some camaraderie. Maybe there's even a little bit of ribbing going on. Like, we got a guy in our office who takes appointments. They're so far away. So every time he sets an appointment, we're like, how far are you driving today, dude? Yeah. And every time it's obscenely far. It happened again this morning when we were leaving the office. But that's culture, right? Seychelle Van Poel said this to me a long time. As a leader, you have no control over office culture whatsoever. It does what it's going to do. Right. Of course, you can be a good steward of it. You can come in and show up and set a great example, but the culture is going to develop itself. And that's one of the things that I love about what we have is that, like, it's fun in there. I have been in the last couple of days and I've missed it.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's where I needed to get. I need to get to a space where not going to the office felt weird. And it takes some time. It does take some time to get there.
So I think a lot of agents then, if we look at it, is they look for, if we could really reverse engineer this, and we want to blame the economy, right? We want to blame
it's not helping either. I agree.
Sure. We want to blame high interest rates. We want to blame high pricing. We want to blame inflation and everything, and the negative media, and then the election, being an election year, and kind of the chaos with that. That's noise. But as the problem that I see in the real estate agent industry is that we want everything and we want it for free, right? We want full service for free, but we don't want our clients to ask for full service and not charge.
That's
either,
always the thing,
right? And they want to be at a flat fee broker. They want to be at 100%. They don't want to pay for trainings. They want to work from home, and they don't want to come in the office. And where I see a lot of the issues with this is, like, guys, we are, as business owners, it's our job and duty to make sure that we are educating ourselves on what's happening here in the marketplace and becoming that real expert to give our expertise opinion of where we think it's going to go based on, hopefully, real statistics, and not just making it up.
And here's the thing is, you ain't going to like the splits on those ready to go hot leads. I can tell you that right now.
No.
I had this conversation with a new licensee or somebody taking the training classes today, and they were just asking about, like, lead structure. It's a very common question for any agent to ask, honestly, but especially agents who haven't entered the business yet. And I didn't struggle, but I had to make sure to explain to her, like, the opportunity at the business is the best thing you're going to get, right? Because if you do want everything for free and you do want hot leads, that's fine. We knew a team. There's a guy here in this office who's amazing, who's now a solo agent, but he was on a team where all he did was run listing appointments, right? I also think he was getting 25% splits. Like the team was taking 75 to 80% of that money. Now, his time cost was really, really low. He was spending 90 minutes on each of these listings and then he handed off to the team and he was done. So that you can do that. But you need to be a structured, efficient, and very skilled business owner to achieve that. You don't get to have that right out of the box. And we know this about life, but for some reason, like, we get here and we're like, give me everything.
And to go back on some of the thought processes that we have is that's what's holding us back from success. Right. When we sit down and say, why did we get into this industry? We want it for time freedom, unlimited income earning potential, to build wealth, and to probably buy real estate and invest in real estate. And we don't educate ourselves on any of it. We go through and either go really hard on studying for the real estate test and exam. And then after that, maybe we go to some of the brokerage trainings. Maybe we chose a brokerage because of that flat fee or the very low cost. And that's not, when a brokerage does that, what incentive do they have to help you grow?
Well, and where do they have money to buy the things that you want, right?
Yes.
Like it just, I don't think you're a very common sense business owner if you think you can pay nothing to a business and they can give you many things, right? As a business owner, you should understand that resources are going to affect your ability to go add stuff to whatever you offer. And I think real estate, like you've said before, real estate agents tend to forget that when it's focused at them.
Yep. And again, they want to work from home.
Yep.
And they're not very disciplined at doing that. They don't have their own office space set up, or if they do, they're finding, they might do one work related task and then they go do personal, at home, chores.
I know very, very few business owners who have any business working from home. It's hard to do.
It's a discipline.
It really is.
And a lot of times the people that do that very well have built up that discipline over years, right? They probably worked at a large corporation before that worked from home, and they had to meet KPI metrics, and that goes down to most agents don't know their numbers.
Yeah,
you made that 1,000 dial a day. Right now you probably need to make 100 to 300 dials a day to talk to a certain amount of people.
Yep.
And that certain amount of people is going to be somewhere between 8 to 10%, which hasn't changed much.
No,
even with all the screening, everything going on, you still see on average 8 to 10% contact rate.
And it's the great thing is like when you're tracking it, one of the things that I think a lot of agents have access to and they don't use as a CRM. We're super fortunate to have Brivity on our team, and it's so all inclusive. Like you just never have to leave the platform to do stuff. So I can very easily not only dial out of it, I can also see exactly how many people picked up, right? I track my numbers the same way all the time. I don't count hangups as a contact, right? Like, and so for me, I know very clearly when my numbers are going up and down. Just like if you call expireds every day, 7 months ago, expireds in Frisco went through the roof out of nowhere. And that was an indicator the Frisco market has started slowing down. Like just being in your business will give you some of that. And then being aligned with the right people or having the right systems in your business is going to help you to track it at a higher level because you can't remember everything.
Yeah. So if we were to say, all right, Matt, you are tasked. You are Matt GPT, right? So you're talking to Matt AI, and you are the best real estate business consultant, known to people, and you are tasked to lower this 71%. Give me top three things to start helping agents, getting into production. I'm putting you on the spot.
No, I feel like I can answer this pretty confidently. I think your knowledge around what's happening on the mortgage side of things is absolutely necessary. You need to have a lender that you talk to, or you need to subscribe to some sort of newsletter or something and take the time to read it every single day. There's lots of things happening. Our guy at Envoy Mortgage, James Beaver, he sends out an email that is fantastic. I use the information from it all week long in social media posts and conversations with buyers. You have to be a student of your craft. You need to understand what's going on out there. And I'm not talking about the noise. You're not going to find this on lab coats. You're not going to find this in Real Estate Mastermind. That is noise. I'll tell you right now, leave those groups. Leave them today. You're not getting anything from those groups. Go and find something that you can subscribe to where you'll get that information every day.
By the way, the 71%'s in there always giving advice about how to make all these sales, and they're not doing it.
Those groups are dumpster fires. Yeah. I love I like the guys who run them, but those, and I want them to be successful, but there's not a single thing happening in that group that is moving your business forward. I promise.
Yep.
The other thing is, you don't have to do everything as far as lead generation, but you have to pick a couple of things and you have to sit in them. And I think if you're an agent who has limited funds or is relatively new, make sure you're at a brokerage that has lots of listings. There's open house opportunity through the roof. If you're at some small boutique brokerage and there's 2 agents there and you guys are carrying 5 or 6 listings total, that is hindering your ability to do business, right? Being at a large brokerage like EXP allows me to go. And the cool thing about the EXP deal is when I go on the MLS, it says my office active listings. There's over 700 in there. So if I want to do something in Plano or McKinney there is no reason why I couldn't be doing open houses until my face turned blue. And they're just free.
Let me ask you this. Actually, let me give you a scenario. If I could tell you, Matt, that every open house that you did could earn you $400 or more every time you did that, would you go do it?
Yeah, of course.
So I have a buddy that runs a great team, and they did 870, we'll call it 871 open houses in 2024. and that resulted in minimum of 350,000 in revenue. So that came out, just on that number alone, that came out to $401 per open house.
Yep.
I would do that deal every single day.
Absolutely.
Right. And so, and what you're talking about is, one, if we recap it, your first two is student of the game. So understanding, what you're talking about. And some of that comes down to scripting.
Definitely.
Also understanding what's happening in the market. So again, student of the craft. Number two is, pick 2 to 3 lead generation levers and go a mile deep, not a mile wide.
Yes. I'll tell you right now, I am not doing open house right now. I did a ton in 2024. I haven't really kicked it back off. Weather's been cold. It's been rainy. I haven't been super motivated. It's a part of my spring thing as things start clearing back up. But I've been really, really hyper focused on old buyer opportunity, which is already paying dividends in 2025 for me. I really focused at the end of the year, finding the people who are going to buy this year. I knew during the holidays, most people were going to they were kind of de-incentivized to do something right then, with interest rates being where they're at and higher inventory. So I just embraced that. And I was like, how can I take part of my lead generation efforts and stockpile fish in the pond for next year? Right. And I've got hundreds of people that have reminders spread throughout the first 2 quarters of this year based on what our conversation was. Right. I was able to dial in all of their listing alerts and all of those things. So I was really intentional about finding business for this year. And then I just think there's a real opportunity on the expired and for sale by owner side. There's just, and I know this doesn't work great for every market because every market doesn't have as many expireds as we have or for sale by owners as we have. But those 2 lead sources need real estate agent help more than ever.
Yep.
They don't know how to navigate this commission thing. They don't know how to navigate the fact that there's 7 other houses on the market. They may be priced correctly for kind of maybe what the comps say, but they have a need to sell faster. Our days on market right now, I think are 56 around here. That feels like forever. That feels so long right now. And it definitely feels forever to sellers, right? So that is a market that has a huge, huge need. And there's again, this is where it comes back to the collaboration. I love so much that I get to hear so many different people's approaches to how they call expireds every day, because I'll cherry pick stuff out. David said something the other day at the end of a call. He's like, he kind of hit a dead end. He's like, why don't you tell me where we go from here? And I was like, what an unreal question. I can't tell you how many times where I've just been like, I don't know what else to say to this person, but I'm stuck in this mindset of I'm the professional. I need to guide the conversation. He just straight up asked, he's like, so where do we take this from here? And the guy's like, why don't you call me back in 30 days? And I'm like, there's no way that worked. The guy just set his own callback appointment.
Simplistic.
It was fantastic.
Yeah.
And we just have overcomplicated stuff so much. It doesn't have to be that hard.
What would be number 3? And if you can't think of something, let me guide you a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we'll go and throw some out. I probably have something, but it's a little weak.
Well, we need real accountability groups.
That's much better.
Real working labs.
Yes. And this is something that I am super proud of that you and I have put together. And the level of engagement, and this goes back to using, I know we're talking to Matt GPT right now, but using Chat GPT for this type of stuff is absolutely amazing. The labs that we've been able to put together for the agents, not only are they informative and intentional, they come with action plans, because this is the thing about trainings that everybody wants you to engage with, but most people don't. It's the stuff that you do afterwards. Everybody loves, and they're the nicest person in church from 10:45 till noon on a Sunday. And then they're cussing at somebody in the parking lot the second day they get out of there, right? We just go to these trainings to feel like we real estated that day, but we don't put any real action to it. And that's one of the things about the working labs that we've been able to build out is that, like we're ending the 4-week expired one tomorrow. And each week it's added a little small thing. Like the first week, it was just make 10 expired calls this week, right? And then it was talk to 15 expireds this week. And then last week it was set 1 expired appointment this week. And I don't know what the heck the ones for tomorrow I have to check. I'm sure it's taking expired listing, but it's actionable stuff. And the whole class is designed to help you do that thing.
And y'all are doing it together.
And we're doing it together.
Right. So you're not talking at them and then saying, hey, Matt, go home, or stay here, stay late. Y'all are making calls together.
Yes.
You're practicing this together. And that's the biggest part of that, where I'm seeing, again, the 71% of agents that did not sell us in 2024 is that we're not, one, holding ourselves truly accountable. We're not getting into the right accountability or collaboration groups. And, honestly, we let our ego, I'm going to go back to the ego driving the bus at the wrong moment, is that we're letting egos come in and saying like, no, I joined this brokerage and I see, we'll we'll just use ours, our brokerage and our team, just as a scenario. They don't want to join us because they're over here, even though it's not working.
Yep.
And then what ends up happening is that, people either use up all their financial resources and they don't have enough runway left to get to restart. And we have to, in 25, we've got to lower this ego. We've got to lower this this barrier, and allow people that truly care, that is showing the ways that it's working right now. We're not talking about something that was working 10, 20, 30 years ago. We're talking about stuff that's working right now for agents of all calibers, new, experience. They only had COVID success, and then afterwards their business fell. And as long as you can get into those collaboration groups and you keep that going, there's a reason why Bold at Keller Williams, which is what is it, 8 weeks long?
8 weeks, yep.
8 weeks long. There's a reason why when agents that participate in that and pay the $800, naturally you see a increase in business.
Yep.
Why? Because every single week you're around people, and you guys during that time, they're actually making the calls during those days, and they're going through those processes. They're tracking their numbers of how many calls, contacts, appointments set, appointments taken and won and lost. And then after those 8 weeks, what do?
They don't do any of those activities anymore.
It's like a diet.
Yes.
Right? You're like, all right, I got Cabo coming up, and I got to get this body looking good. So they go on this little diet. They starve themselves. They get down to their weight. And then after that's over, and they indulge in the Cabo trip, and then they get back, and then they don't do what got them to keep their weight down, and now they're doing the same thing in their business.
Back in 2021, I was doing Project U, and we were up in Vermont, and I got to get some really great FaceTime with some amazing people. And this guy named Matt Miali, who's runs a huge team up in Connecticut, and he's one of the dopest humans I've ever met, said, you have to become the person who doesn't need to lose 10 pounds. Meaning, like, it's not about losing the weight. It's really easy. It's not easy. You lose the 10 pounds, you lose the 15 pounds, you lose the 20 pounds, and it goes right back up. The mindset around becoming the person who weighs 20 pounds less is how you keep the weight off. It's not the discipline around the diet. That's necessary to get down, but now you have to fundamentally change who you are as a person, and you don't have to be the person who doesn't weigh 20 pounds heavier. You have to be the person who doesn't take lead generation off, right? And essentially Bold is just really aggressive dieting.
Yes.
It gets you down to your core weight. And it does it in a healthy way.
And you paid $800, and you don't want to lose that.
Exactly. But then you don't maintain it, because after that there isn't the same juice. And I agree. That's why you need to be in alignment with people who are doing stuff. Walk around this office today. We used to be a big part of it. There's a lot more people in here than I've seen in the past. Right? There's a lot of people in here trying to get after it because they're feeling that exact thing. And those people, I don't know a single real estate agent right now who is having the same and or more success by doing less. There's not a one. Yep. David did a ton of deals. You also know what he said to me? Kind of had some chest pains this year too. Like, he worked his ass off to close those deals. He was stressed out to close those deals.
By the way, David was at the office till 9:30 last night.
I believe it. And here's the thing is, and I would say this to his face and whatever, I know he's a goofball sometimes. I don't know if I know anybody who's more serious about getting shit done than that guy.
Yeah.
And it shows up. He closed over 50 deals last year.
Yeah. I think 58 deals.
It's unbelievable.
So what I would say to this is that, maybe this is a wake-up call. Maybe you got into this because you wanted to not have a boss. You wanted to have that time freedom. You wanted unlimited income earning potential, which you still have, but you don't have the time freedom.
No.
Right. And more than likely you need not a boss, but you need accountability. You need that collaborative environment, because we thrive in community, right? There's very few people out there that thrive solo.
Yeah.
That just like, man, I don't want to be around people. They say they don't, but they actually have those people that say they don't like being around people actually have their small pack. They just don't run in the large pack.
Yeah. That's why I'm with everyone else's children.
Yes. I just create a large pack myself.
Yeah.
I don't need other people's children.
You're
I just
trying
have
to fill up
pack.
a church pew over there.
Yes. But I would just to start wrapping this up, and this is something we're going to continue talking about in 25 on the Only Real Estate Podcast worth listening to, is really getting into the nuts and bolts of what's working. It's not theoretical like what ifs. This is, hey, how do we take action today? What is working right now? And this is what really the podcast was built on in the very beginning. It was to talk about the problems. It was kind of more of a venting show, and what is actually working. Because what I got tired of is people selling coaching programs that were crap, and then you wasted money and you were still filled with hope. And then really you were setting yourself back, 2 steps backwards, and then you still had to recover the money that you put into that coaching program or that product.
Because there is a personal tailoring to how you run your business as well, right? Like some of the coaching things, they are too broad in their generalization. And unless you pay really high dollar, you're not getting an hour of that person's time to help them walk you through business plans and scheduling and all those things. And that's still a relatively small amount. Like you can sit, how many times I've redone my calendar in my career, right? Like at one point I had little gray lines in there for driving. It was the most obnoxious thing to look at ever. None of it mattered. Because all I was doing was looking at that stuff and being like, oh, I can't get that today, but I'll get to it tomorrow. Like putting it in my calendar didn't change my overall personality, right? Like I just had to be okay with being uncomfortable with whatever that thing was for a short period of time. And then you start seeing some results from it and you start feeling better about it.
By the way, that uncomfortableness goes away.
It always goes away.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You were uncomfortable, making calls.
Yep.
Let's be real. Like one of the things that probably even held you back from the Good Home team at one point was the calls that that we really thrive on.
Yep.
And you started coming in and you're like, man, this isn't that hard.
Yep.
People aren't that mean.
No.
Right? We're actually helping people. And what was once hard now becomes routine. That's just this is and you start to grow accustomed to that. And then in order for us to get to that quote unquote next level, which we could do a whole show on next leveling, and is that what we really want in our lives? Because it actually can create more chaos and complicatedness and actually hold you back from making more money. Is that we still need to do things to make us uncomfortable in order to make sure that our business doesn't contract.
Yes.
Right.
You and I have talked about this. I've gotten very simple. I've got in my life, in everything. We were just talking before we went on air how excited I was because I canned French onion soup for under $1 a jar.
87 cents a jar.
That if you would have talked to Matt Kelderman 2 years ago, he would have slapped himself for saying something that ridiculous. You know what I mean? Some of it's just I just got really clear about what mattered, what didn't matter. And I never really know how to explain this thought. And so I don't want to take too long trying to do it, but like there's just sometimes a realization that all of a sudden you're like, I was looking at that problem completely incorrectly. Like the other day, Victoria and I needed the house to be empty of all kids. And I'm sitting there trying to figure out like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? It's like the solution was right there. I was just adamant that was the one thing I wasn't going to do.
Yeah.
Right. And that was so silly because once I did it, it popped everything free that we needed. Everything was fine. Whatever I was worried about wasn't an issue. And the kids were dispersed where they needed to be so we could go and do what we needed to do. Right. Yep. But I had myself convinced that one thing was, and it was like the one thing that freed up for the other stuff. And whenever I recognize those things, I do try and take action on them because for me, that's a really important thing. When you recognize these spaces in your life where you're unnecessarily cluttering it up because of some previous misheld belief, I'm like, I'm definitely not going to lose time and life and effort and friendships over that.
Yeah, I agree. And to wrap this up, by the way, as you're watching this and you're going back and watching the replay, or if you're listening on Spotify or iTunes, leave us a review on Spotify and iTunes, and please take the time to do that because that will, it rewards us, right? And it means that people are listening, people are watching, and, we don't get paid to do this. And two, just make a comment on it. If you're watching this on Facebook or if you're watching on YouTube, just comment on that and tell us kind of your thought process, but stop getting ready to get ready. Just do it. And there is a thought process of ready, fire, aim, then getting ready to fire, then aiming, and then re-aiming, and then hoping that you're going to, then the wind changes and you can't fire because you'll run out of money and you'll run out of time and money.
50% of everything you're doing is in some state of flux or straight up broken.
Yep.
It's in that, and even when you get better and you're trying new stuff, it's going to stay the same.
100%. So, won't be back next week, the week after. And then, we'll get to a regular cadence on this for our Wednesdays at 3.
Maybe I will pop in here next Wednesday, do a Q&A session with these 7 people.
It does feel good to be back.
It does. I leading into this, we were kind of sitting here a little bit like, all right, whatever, but it's like now doing it, this has been really awesome. I'm glad this was fun.
And it's good to have Jesse back behind it.
I know. He is a hairy monstrosity back there.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. Tune in 2 weeks, or maybe the Q&A session next week.
Maybe. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay. Love you guys. Bye. Thanks for watching the show today. Make sure if you're watching this on Facebook, you head over to our group, the only real estate group worth being a part of, so you can watch the extended conversation. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And if you listen on the Apple Podcast, leave us a review. We'd really like it. So just do it. Do it. Do that over there. Go to this one, and then go to that one. Thanks.